Welcome to this episode of Chew the Cud. I'm John Houston, Director of Business Services for ProTrition Feed. We're glad that you've joined us this evening. I'm happy to introduce our guest this evening, Mr. Todd Steen. Todd is ruminant nutritionist for ProTrition Feed. We've worked together a long time, and Todd has been in this industry, Todd, approaching 40 years, close to it. And so we're happy that you've joined us, and we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about feeding sheep and some of the products that the Co-op brand has to offer you as you feed your sheep. So Todd, as we think about feeding sheep or any animal, what are some of the things we really need to have in mind before we start trying to select a feed?
First things first, obviously they are ruminant animals. So one of the first things we want to look at is what's the forage program, what type of quality of that forage, and then we will match on the basis of that. Depending on the protein content there, will dictate to us if we need a feed that has a little bit more protein, or one that where if our forage quality is maybe a little suspect on the energy content, that we might need something that has a little more energy there. So we have multiple products. Also, with the small ruminant animal, we're always interested to make sure we know what the mineral supplementation is, not only from a major mineral perspective, but also from the trace mineral perspective. When we deal with the small ruminant, it's copper. Where is that at? Do we have any antagonists out there in our forage? That do our forages have a lot of copper, or any of the other supplements that the animal may be associated with. The major mineral is very important. We want to make sure we get that balanced, particularly for our wether lambs, particularly for our rams, to make sure that is perfectly in balance, because we don't want to have to predispose the animal to any kind of conditions such as urinary calculi or water belly. Some people call it that. So there are things right off the bat that we'll want to investigate.
So get all that put together, and you're a producer. What are some of the things a producer needs to know before they select a feed?
If we're going to start with the young lamb, let's start there. We're going to creep feed that animal. If we're going to creep feed the young lamb, we want a good pelleted feed. We don't really want what I would call a soft pellet. We want one that will stand up to the pressures and that will be clean and free. We also want to consider we need to consider how much that animal is going to eat. They're probably not going to eat very much right off the bat, so we're going to want to have a feed that's fairly concentrated to meet the animal's requirements. We also might want to think about medication here because of potential for coccidiosis. So we're going to want to make sure that we have something to protect or have that coccidiostat. As the animal grows and gets larger, then we can move into a product that's less concentrated, because the animal obviously is going to have a higher feed intake. So we get to spread that nutrition out over a larger intake. So we can have one that has a little bit less protein to it. We also really still want to consider the medication, particularly the ionophore. We want to consider that, not only for coccidiosis prevention and protection, I should say, but also for rate of gain, that it will help that aspect of it. And then as we get into finishing the animal, finishing that lamb, then we want something that has plenty of energy, that the animal will readily consume. So we'll want to move to a grow finish type of a product. Now, if we want to back up a little bit and look at the ewe, we want to maintain the ewe in good, proper condition. And we'll for sure want to maintain her feed intake as she's in gestation, and to supplement that and to get her prepped for the lambing and make sure she is in good shape, but also to help her out when she does lamb and she starts milking heavily. We're going to want to make sure that we have some kind of a product out there for them. The older animal, the ewe, can handle different forms. We could have a pelleted feed. We could have a textured feed. Either way, either which way that that you would prefer with that physical form. But we want to make sure that we keep her in good shape and make sure she's got plenty of energy to satisfy lactation and to grow the lambs.
Excellent. Well, Co-op does have a feed for each one of those purposes that you just described, and maybe in some cases more than one feed, depending on what the situation is on the farm. And I wanted to point out to our viewers this brochure. Now, this brochure is available at your local co-op, and in the brochure you will find all the co-op brand feeds listed and a little bit about those feeds, but most importantly is a chart in this brochure that will show you the protein, the fiber, all those energy levels, those type of things in this chart for every feed, so you can more easily pick out the feed that will do the job you need done on the farm. So, Todd, I want to ask you specifically about some of these feeds. First of all, we have what we call an all-purpose feed. Now, where would you use that feed?
Well, the all-purpose for maintenance of our breeding stock. They're in good shape and got good forage going to them, but we want to maintain that body condition. Be it our rams, be it our ewes. It could also be some from replacement animals. This one particular feed would be able to satisfy the requirements for all of those different points of production there.
And one thing to note about that feed, though, as far as our audience is concerned, is it is not medicated with an ionophore or a coccidiostat. So.
Correct, and we would not have the flexibility for it to be an all-purpose because not everywhere would be legal
Absolutely.
For that particular medication.
Absolutely. So then we have starter feeds and grower feeds, both. So you talked about creep feeding, some of those starter feeds. We have those available. And then we also have grower feeds that are available as well. And then when we get into some of the ewes, just so that our audience knows, we can and do have feeds that have what I will term politely as a prescription drug, or one that requires a veterinary feed directive. But sometimes it's important to have a chlorotetracycline in a feed for the ewes to prevent these early embryonic deaths. So can you explain just a little bit about a feed that would have CTC?
We would do that, and it would be specifically for an animal health issue, particularly in those that would be the chlorotetracycline would take care of that threat. Again, as you mentioned, that is a veterinary feed directive that would require that VFD from a local vet to prescribe that. This is a very common level, particularly for ewe-type diseases. That is what would be more routinely prescribed by the veterinary. That we do have available. That has been a long-standing feed for us for getting that accomplished.
Absolutely, and I wanted to wind up, Todd, just talking a little bit about mineral, whether it's sheep or other livestock. Talk a little bit about the importance of feeding a good mineral as opposed to a trace mineral salt or one of those type of products, or just a white salt. But feeding a good mineral, and some of the reasons we want to have some organic minerals in there.
Sure. The complete mineral would be supplying the major mineral and trace mineral. Major mineral being calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, some of the potassiums, sulfurs, if so desired. Trace minerals meaning zinc, manganese, copper, cobalt, iodine, those particular types of minerals, selenium, and then also vitamins, vitamin A and D and E. Of course, with the small ruminant, we want to start right off the bat with our vitamin supplementation. We want to make sure we have a full, good, nice complement of vitamin E and selenium because of the potential for white muscle disease that can be associated with the small ruminant, but also the package for major mineral and trace mineral, because when we supplement that, the animal does have the requirement, and we want to make sure that that animal gets it. If we get our major minerals, in particular, out of balance, then we have the potential to predispose that animal to issues. We mentioned urinary calculi, but we could also have some down type issues from a tetany perspectives and those kinds of things if we get them all out of whack. So comparing that to the trace mineral salt, all that's giving you basically is salt that has a little bit of trace mineral. That may help you on the selenium aspect, but it will not help you on the vitamin E or on any of the other minerals to keep them in some type of balance. So you're much, much better off to be able to supply the fully fortified, complete mineral as opposed to just offering some dirty salt, which is really all it is. And remember here, when we start talking about white muscle disease and things like that, selenium is very important in maintaining the muscle integrity. But vitamin E is required to maintain and hold that selenium in the bloodstream. So if we don't supply those two particular nutrients together, then we have less efficacy of being able to affect that disease.
That's a great point. Todd, appreciate you being with us this evening, and appreciate our viewers joining in at this time. And I ask you to join us each month for Chew the Cud. And if you have questions about co-op products and co-op feeds in particular, please see your folks at your local farmers co-op. Thank you for joining us.